Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with 36 Cancel, and this is Coco the Weiss Cat, and I'd like to officially welcome all of you to 2023. I hope this year that all of you out there achieve your New Year's resolutions and make this one yours. I've got a few hopes myself, one of them being to play more Weiss. But speaking of playing Weiss, if you were playing at the start of 2022 and are now playing at the start of 2023, things look a lot different. I seriously feel like we're playing a different game sometimes, and that's because Weiss underwent some major developments in 2022, radically growing its player base, introducing new and very popular titles, and in some ways, changing how we even expect a Weiss Schwarz deck to play. So given all of that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about what exactly went on in Weiss Schwarz in 2022, and maybe wax poetic on how things have developed, and there's no better place to start than some of the iconic new titles that came with that year. First on the list, Mushoku Tensei. Mushoku Tensei introduced a lot of strong cards to the format and is now known for its iconic standby deck that swept many tournaments when it came out last March. Some of the heavy hitters in that deck are the level 1/1 Eris that pluses on a standby combo, a level 3 Paul that reflects cancel damage back of your opponent, and a level 3 Ghislaine that you can do absolutely nothing about. The deck had a lot of tech and consistency for an 8 standby package, way more so than we've ever had before, and put out crazy power numbers. In fact, the deck was so powerful it had a restriction placed on it, making players choose between the 2/2 global power engine or the 2/1 rest counter that were played in the deck. Generally, people drop the rest counter, but despite all that, Mushoku Tensei is still played at top tables even after taking the hit, really proving its power and popularity. But let's be real, the big news in 2022 and the major game changer for Weiss Schwarz was HoloLive. It brought in all sorts of new eyes to the game, from people who were just fans of VTubers to serial merch collectors, all the way to your average degenerate anime fan. But this wasn't just Bushi putting VTubers on cards to make money. HoloLive came down on the game like a meteor from space, and we still live in the crater to this day. Never before in Weiss Schwarz had a set contained so many playable and strong options, truly made for anyone who liked any VTuber from gamers to 5th generation. Though the star of the show right now is definitely Hosho Marine herself, with this on-attack pay 1 pitch 1 burn 2 finisher that also digs and refunds hand and stock. The efficiency and consistency that she offers makes Marine by far the most popular top end of any of the million different HoloLive decks out there that you see on the tournament scene. Though she does share the stage with Kanata, the level 3 early play climax combo that can basically reset your clock, hand, and stock. And of course, Rushia is up there too, still hating on your compression and being very hard to deal with, as she was known to do IRL before she got the app. I could go on and on about the many different HoloLive cards that are ever present and groundbreaking, but the list would overtake the entire video. But in terms of looking back at 2022, HoloLive is the major mile marker and turning point that anyone would immediately think of if they reminisced on the year. Somehow, however, HoloLive does not manage to overshadow the other releases that happened between May and December. Now this is partially because the HoloLive Premium Extra Booster went up for pre-order soon after the set came to English, but it's worth noting that HoloLive and a few subsequent sets, like Tokyo Revengers, were delayed by a month or two because of COVID-related general fuckery. But speaking of that, let's talk about Tokyo Revengers. It's hard to look back and try to remember how people were talking about this set before it came out, but when it did come to English, the biggest surprise we got was just how unique the playstyles offered by the set were. In fact, the tournament scene was hit by total surprise by one of the most different Weiss Schwarz decks in the history of the game, Dual Laners. Named for the so unique strategy of only attacking in 2 lanes instead of 3 in the center stage positions until you were ready to kill your opponent, Dual Lanes featured multiple enabler cards that gave you a lot of rewards for having only 2 characters in your center stage. The deck strategy is to use these bonuses and build a lot of clean stock and keep their hand padded until they're ready to execute their big kill combo, which costs a whopping 8 stock to activate, making it by far the most expensive finishing combo that's ever been played at top tables. This is achieved through a combination of cards that mill and burn on play, and a card that gets a lot of markers and then changes into another character who gets all those markers and then burns your opponent for each marker. Engaging with this deck was very different because if you played a normal game against it where you clocked yourself for your abilities, slammed 1k1s, and tried to punish the deck for slow rolling you, it came back like a rubber band that was pulled taut and snapped you right in the face. This deck can straight kill someone from 2-3. I've seen it happen. Believe it or not though, Revengers offers an even more unique and crazy strategies, including a deck that plays as though it runs 24 different choice triggers, and in line with that, a 12 standby deck. These weird numbers are not achieved by adding more climaxes to your deck, but rather by introducing the mechanic that under certain circumstances, you can treat some characters as though they had the climax triggers when you reveal them during the trigger step. Remember this because this will come up later. Moving right along though, DanMachi, a long-awaited set for many potential and current English Weiss players, finally came over. And just in time too. DanMachi is actually one of the most punishing decks to play against if you're running 8 standby. Trust me, after grinding Mushoku into DanMachi for months trying to get practice, I can confirm the matchup is about 70-30 in DanMachi's favor. making this one of the most polarized matchup in the history of the game's meta for anyone playing standby. And now that it's here, should standby ever become too large, this consistent and punishing deck will always be waiting in the shadows to rein it in. This of course comes much to the relief of many Weiss Schwarz players who thought standby was just too much of an unfair and uninteractable deck strategy this year, and with more modern standby decks, that's not surprising. Consider, if you will, the set to come out soon after, which was Quintessential Quintuplets Volume 2. This expansion gave every single quintuplet a major power-up, but most notably in 2022, it introduced the Plague that was the 12 Nino standby deck to English, and much like the Black Plague, it seems to have killed 33% of the entire deck population. I'd wager a good third, or at least close to it, of many major tournaments post-Quints 2 was people playing standby Nino. This, of course, is because of how good both Nino's new combos are, both being on standby triggers. The first of which is a 2-2 that can attack the turn it comes out, swings in at 13k, and has Hand Encore. The second is a level 3 that heals, burns for 3 damage, and also, like some stuff in Tokyo Revengers, lets you treat her as a standby trigger when you have her climax in play. This is especially potent as Nino has a level 0 that lets you reshuffle cards back into your deck. You can see how this can be degenerate. Despite how crazy good this is, I'd be ashamed if I didn't mention that the game's best new level 1 combo isn't even in this deck, which is this new Itsuki. She has a potential +2 with a built-in filter, and she's even supported by a Brainstormer that lets you hold extra cards in hand. Itsuki's new finisher, Burn 1 then Burn 4, is also nothing to sneeze at. Call me crazy, but I think we might see more of her in the future. But moving on to things not as degenerate, let's talk about the fall. The fall releases for Weiss weren't really powerhouses, but there were some things that people were majorly excited for. Of course, HoloLive Premium, while only introducing a few actually played cards to the already amazing set, was highly sought after for its beautiful SPs. Premium also had English and Indonesian VTubers, so people could finally get those Gura SPs they'd been waiting so long for. Later in November, a set that virtually no one thought would ever come to English, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, stole everyone's attention with its shockingly and miraculously unaltered art for the English market. Man, that was the right call, Bushi. I can't give you any hard numbers on this, but I'd be willing to bet that this release signified the most trial decks ever bought, sold, and opened for a single set that didn't have like 5 different TDs. I'll tell you what, if you were looking to collect any pretty Dragon Maid cards, this set delivered. It also gave us some hilarious meme decks, one of which I took to New York Regionals. And hold that thought for a moment while I quickly highlight the last set to release in 2022, the 7 Deadly Sins Volume 2 Revival of the Commandments. I made a set showcase video very recently for this one, so if you haven't checked that out, the link will be in the description. But this was a majorly popular title, and the first sequel English original set ever, making it possible that we could see a Ruby set 2 or even a Cardcaptor set 2. Or maybe a Batman Ninja set 2? Yeah, let's not think about that. Anyway, the big highlight of SDS2 was that Escanor finally hit the stage, and he has a new finisher that does not care how compressed you are, so watch out for him. But anyway, back to that bookmark we put down earlier, because now it's time to talk about the tournaments in 2022. This was a major year because for the first time since COVID, Weiss Schwarz held in-person shop leagues, Springfest, and of course the Fall Championship Series. There were also BRO tournaments this year, and I was glad to see those stick around even though we got the in-person tournaments back. Personally, I'd wanted to go to a few more of these since it was the first year back, but due to time constraints and a lot of sickness in the fall, I only got to attend one Springfest and one regional. I did make videos for both though, so check out those on the channel for how I and my team personally made out. I'll say this much though, it was very good to be back and playing Weiss in settings like this. I missed this a lot, and I'm sure I wasn't alone. And you know, there were a lot of improvements to these tournaments too. For example, free water was present at pretty much each venue, and the play space and quality of venue were really up there. Also, the bushiroad pop-up shop made several appearances at these tournaments with other official merchandise support, and the vendors aside from that were really strong this year too. Now, I can only go off secondhand knowledge on some of this, but from what I gather, people were really satisfied with a lot of these in-person events. But of course, we can't talk about the tournament scene without talking about the field. Now, there are a lot of other people that have put a concentrated effort into meta breakdown and the actual statistics of the playing field, and I highly encourage you to check some of those out if you're interested in that. But to spare you all my feeble attempt at it, I'll summarize by saying that their findings were pretty much in line with what I observed with my own eyes. There were basically 3 major arcs to the tournament scene in 2022. The first arc was Mushoku, which was from March onward to summer, where it really dominated the field. As soon as HoloLive came out in May, however, it quickly became over 30% of the actual represented tournament decks in many major events. These two giants really ate up the Springfest rep, but since it was in trios, you did see a little more variety with stuff like Bang Dream, Slime, and Ruby keeping numbers above 10% in some of the field. This is also where the Tokyo Revengers started showing up and posting results with that crazy dual laners deck. August, of course, introduced Quints 2, and for a while, it seemed like the championship series was 40% HoloLive, 40% Nino, and 20% other. Of course, it wasn't that bad, but it was close. That said, if you were looking at 2022 and wondered what the tournament scene was like back then, here are 3 cards that sum it up really nicely. Man, Red sure was dominant in 2022. Now, as fun as they are, major regionals and spring fests aren't the only tournaments worth talking about in 2022. This past year, Bushi really came through with a locals experience too. For the first time, title cups were brought to English, with local shops receiving unique prize support to run special tournaments to celebrate new sets as they came out. They also started releasing promo packs with foil versions of PR cards alongside the standard monthly promos, which have incentivized more locals play. I think both of these new moves from Bushi have been great for getting people excited to play at locals again, and amazing hooks into newer sets. Playing in a title cup might only take a trial deck or two, but hey, I've seen people that do that, then decide they like the set more than they thought they would, and discover more with it. Heck, this stuff has even helped my locals grow at an amazing pace this year. All in all, with new tournament support and returning to in-person tournaments, this has been a major year for Weiss Schwarz. That said, let's have a look at some of the other changes this year. The banned and restricted list is a good thing to talk about here. 2 different sets were actually hit by a choose one of 2 restriction, and in fact, it was 2 of the biggest ones. Mushoku Tensei, like we said before, had the rest counter in the 2/2 go lane restricted. These are both amazing things for standby decks, so effective in October of 2022, you could no longer run both. This did have the effect of bringing the Mushoku rep down a decent chunk, but the deck is by no means unviable. Further, bushiroad actually reversed the restriction choice and unrestricted the K runner from Kaguya. You still have to choose between one of the 2, which are the Chikoriki and the Eye Drop Searcher, but many people thought the original restriction was way too harsh, and Bushi listened to the community on this one, so props to them. With Kaguya Set 2 coming out soon, I'm looking forward to seeing this beloved title across the table more often. And the other giant that got hit was Nino. This didn't actually come down until December 2022 and was a restriction that will be effective right before Worlds this year. The Nino Draw, Discard, and Salvage Engine level 0 that really kept the deck running was restricted against the 2/3-3 soul event, so Nino decks can either adopt different level 0 engines or drop the anti-soul counter. Again, this doesn't really make Nino unplayable, but it's definitely going to leave a mark. To really see the effect, we'll have to examine the results of Worlds 2022, which happens to be taking place as I'm working on this video. The lucky part of making a 22 wrap-up so late is that I get to include 2022 Worlds in it, so let's talk about those. This year, Weiss Schwarz Worlds happened in Los Angeles, California, taking place on Saturday, the 28th of January. This tournament was the first major tournament where the Nino restriction was in place and the new SDS set was legal, and a lot of people wondered how that would affect the World stage. So without delaying further, here are the top 8 World Champion Weiss Schwarz decks for 2022. In first and second, 8 Standby Nino, despite the restriction, still took the top 2 spots. However, in a major upset, Broskinor took 3rd and 4th. In 5th, the only HoloLive deck to top 8 was Marine Kanata, followed by Quintuplets playing the ever-reliable Memory Slime build. At 7th, there was another Escanor deck, and in 8th, another 8 Standby Nino deck, so 6 out of the top 8 spots in Worlds were evenly distributed between STS and Nino. Man, who would have thought SDS would go toe-to-toe with the Giants at Worlds and tie for the biggest top 8 rep? Clearly though, Nino's restriction wasn't nearly enough to weigh the deck down, so it's likely that 8 Standby Nino will still be a major factor into 2023. But speaking of looking at the future, Worlds also was the place where bushiroad made their major winter announcements, and man, did we get some bangers. At Worlds, the following sets were announced. First, Slime Set 3 is coming over. This set introduces some major new singles like a Burn 3 finisher in blue with a new memory package, a level 1 Milim that kills your opponent's back row, and for the first time adds green to the color wheel for Slime, with Eldora and new Rimuru cards. Second, to no one's surprise but to the celebration of all, Azur Lane is coming to English. Yep, all of you boat fuckers out there get round 2. This set is massive, with over 150 cards, over 40 SPs, some SECs, and is full parallel foil. Many of the SPs and parallel foils are the alternate outfits that Azur Lane is so famous for, and the art in this set, taken from the mobile games Live 2D and art assets, look incredible. This is any boat lover's dream come true, and I know at least a few people that are going to be absolutely ruined by this set. Not to be outdone, however, the next announcement at Worlds was that HoloLive was getting a full sequel set that was coming to English. Right now, we don't have any spoilers on this except that there's another set of HoloLive which is sure to be both collectible and cracked. But don't slow your roll for a second, because the next set announced for English is one that people were praying for. Yep, Spy X Family is coming to English Weiss. Yes, you can finally have your Anna SP. Literally everyone who watched this show and played Weiss wanted to see it on the cards, and their wishes are coming true. Again, no spoilers yet for this one, but I'm sure it'll be amazing. But we couldn't get away without one more major announcement. The next English original set for English Weiss Schwarz is Guilty Gear. Okay, show of hands, who the hell thought I would say Guilty Gear? I don't think anyone would have guessed that in a million years, but it has a large fan base and the characters look awesome, and I'm very interested to see how this looks on Weiss Schwarz cards. So that was Weiss Schwarz Worlds, which wraps up the Weiss year for 2022. We had some of the biggest titles ever to hit the stage, the first and probably largest in-person tournament circuit, and some crazy results and announcements at Worlds to wrap up the year. All in all, 2022 was one of the biggest and most exciting years on record for the game, because in addition to everything the Bushi did for the game, the player base and creator sphere for Weiss grew a lot. I really recommend checking out the content of other creators who have been making major moves this year, like Alex Hodges, who streamed a crazy live opening for over $6 grand of old Weiss product at Worlds. I promise that you'll never see anything like that on this channel, so if you want to see that, the link is in the description. He teamed up with Tressa's Collectibles for this, which is another creator that has been posting a ton of gameplay footage this year along with winning deck profiles. In addition, Burn1, a team of talented Weiss players who have been making content before I'd even posted my first videos, are back making their famous Weiss Schwarz podcasts. So if any of you know them from before, or they're new to you, check out their channel for Meta Talk, and recently they made a great video on the path to getting good at Weiss and other TCGs. But if those aren't enough for you, check out some of the other more famous Weiss Schwarz creators, like Pittsburgh Weiss Schwarz, who is actually pretty close to my home turf here on the East Coast, The Clock Tower for great meta breakdown and deck analysis, Big B's channel for both anime and anime TCGs, and of course Casually Weiss Schwarz, who really keeps you up to date with both English and Japanese news, a lot faster than I can make content. And every one of these, of course, will be in the description, so if you want more Weiss content, check all of them out. Now, last on the list, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the other new sets we're going to be seeing very soon into 2023. In February, Kaguya is getting Volume 2 and will likely hit the stage in a major way. This will be followed closely by power-up sets, which will add majorly needed cards to some older expansion, like Horror Heat, Log Horizon, and Kill la Kill. Then another sequel set powerhouse, Day-Day Live Volume 2, will come out in March, so get ready for more Kurumi. In April, Bang Dream will get another expansion, followed by Sword Art 10th Anniversary, the first Sword Art set we've seen in a good while. In May, Saikano Set 2 will come out, giving the set the tool it needs to create a monster memory compression deck, and Grisaia will come out right after it to murder me on Amane and Sachi SPs. In June, we'll see another major sequel set in the form of the Quinns movie expansion. If you thought Quinns was bad now, just wait until you see the movie set. And finally, one of the biggest titles ever acquired by Weiss Schwarz, Avatar: The Last Airbender, is coming in June 2023. This is a major pickup, and if there's no Uncle Iroh meme combo, I'm going to be very upset. However, the memes are already strong with this one, as the supply set that's been spoiled is all about one of the most famous recurring jokes in the show, and I'd say that if you know, you know, but there's virtually no way you don't know. Oh, and one more thing, Chainsaw Man is coming somewhere in here. To my knowledge, we don't have a date for it yet, but we do have some spoilers from the trial deck, which looks super unique and cool. So with all this said, that wraps up 2022 and gives us a great outlook into 2023. Players, this year in Weiss Schwarz was awesome, huge new titles, major growth for the game, and a return to very exciting in-person tournaments. I've watched Weiss Schwarz take leaps and bounds from when I first started making content, and in 2023 I hope it continues to grow and show many new players just how fun Weiss Schwarz is to play, collect, and even make content about. I'll see you all in the new year. I've got some major plans on my end, so as you enjoy Weiss in 2023, stay tuned for a lot more exciting stuff from Coco and I. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.